Well, here we go. I'm real excited. And since it's just me and you, this will be really good. If others come on, that would be great as well. But I want to really go back to what we talked about and the brain based learning strategies to support these ELL, excuse me, and just get a little bit more in depth. And you had a great question that I have been thinking about. Let me tell you, last night I was really, I was exhausted, but I didn't get to bed until like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock because my brain was just like going, going,
Oh
going.
my gosh, Mariah.
I think I was just really excited about it. So I'm excited to see what happens today. But of course, Jamie is not here. But since it is a workshop, it'll be all right because I can see both the screens and we should be good to go. So,
Okay, if I get up, it's because I have to put my dog in the. I don't know if you know, I'm retired. So I only teach one class now, and then I get to, and I
oh,
live here on campus in the dorms. So
oh wow.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I teach from 8:30 to 10:30, and then I come home.
Oh, that must be nice.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah. But
That's Matt was saying today. I want to be retired. That's no fair.
I think we all say that. But then once you
Yeah,
get retired, you get really restless, don't you?
yeah, that's it.
All right, awesome. So our learning outcomes for today are going to be design engaging learning experiences to increase that motivation, engagement within English acquisition. So we've already identified the techniques, so we're just going to talk a little bit more about how to go one step further. Now, I want to do these quick questions, and I absolutely love the questions because they really make you think about what the brain is actually doing. And remember, all of this is trying to make sure we engage our brains, engage our students' brains, and give them the materials that they need to actively remember the materials that we have given them and to go beyond. So this first question, and since it's just like I said, since it's just me and you can say A or B, or you can put it in the chat. I don't care how,
I'd
whichever.
rather talk.
I was gonna say, I think you probably like talking a little bit more. But it says the human brain learns best when information presented to it is emotional, rational, or emotional and rational.
I would think C.
Yes, it is emotional and rational. The human brain needs to, and this is one of those things where I say, you can't just identify one part of the brain. You really have to think about it as a whole. The brain needs to be working in all aspects. So it's best when there's some sort of emotional attachment when you're bringing out these presentations, as well as a rational. You want to make sure that you're connecting to the students on their level. You want to make sure that you're making it relevant. And that's a word that I do use a lot because they're going to be able to connect. If they can make those emotional connections, then they're going to remember it. We can talk about, this is how you do past tense, present tense, so on and so forth, which is all the rational. But it's not until you make that emotional and personal connection will it actually make sense for your learner. So, yes, the human brain best learns when information presented is both emotional and rational. So, for the human brain, question number two, paying attention is most often a conscious choice or an unconscious choice?
I think it has to be a conscious choice.
It is actually unconscious
Really?
because you can't say that you can't. One of the things that they've discovered with the brain is that it's not something where it's like, okay, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to pay attention. Well, that's great, but think about times when you're not paying attention, like when you're not saying, all right, I'm going to really focus in on this. How many times do you hear something in the background and you're like, oh, that's the timer. Oh, that's this. You're paying attention to everything. So it's not necessarily like paying attention is not, we can say, okay, I'm going to really think about this. I'm going to sit. Yes, that's great. But it's not always doing that. Most of the time, it's unconscious. It's paying attention to the surroundings, paying
Hmm.
attention to what is happening beyond what is in front of you. Yeah, I
Okay.
thought this one was really interesting too because I was
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, it's conscious. Like you have to be like, say,
Yeah, I think, I have to say, okay, I'm going to listen.
right? And usually that's what it is. But our brain is most often it's unconscious. It's recognizing the sounds. And so I guess you can also think about it like if you have ever been driving down the road and you're like, oh, I was already here. For us, we feel I wasn't paying attention, but your brain was making that unconscious choice to pay
Hmm.
attention to
Yeah, that makes
coming
sense.
in and out of traffic or getting to your destination fine. And so that's when I really had to think about that. And I was like, wow, our brains are crazy because I did not
Mhm.
think about that at all. Awesome. Attention increases when the learning environment blank and decreases when the environment blank. So changes, changes, doesn't change, changes, or doesn't change, doesn't change.
Wow. Well, I think it increases when it changes and doesn't change.
Yes. So
Okay.
let it be. Yeah, that one was a little hard. I remember typing it up and I was like, oh, wait, I'm getting confused here. So attention increases when the learning environment changes. So if you've ever done the TBR, especially, it's, different trumps same.
Same.
So you always want to make sure that your environment is different because, and if it's changing, your students are going to be wanting to see what the changes are. When I was teaching third and fourth grade, um, I remember I was given like a whole week to decorate my classroom, and I did decorate it, but I didn't put any posters up. And they were like, "Well, aren't you going to put posters up?" And I was like, "You know what? I'm going to put a poster up every single day, something that's different, so that way all of my students have to look for the changes and identify. Okay, that's what we're going to learn." I didn't
Oh,
really
that's
know
interesting.
about like the brain-based learning. That was
Hmm.
just my thing because I know how little kids are and they always want to see what's different, what's new, they want to be engaged. And so for me, I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put something random just in the class so that they have to look for the new thing. Now, did I forget some days? Yes, and I had to say it while I'm wearing new socks or something weird that I really didn't for it. But it really does increase that attention when something is off. Now, you don't want to do it to an extreme where it makes your students uncomfortable. You really have to know your students, but you do want to make sure that there is some sort of changing environment. Because if not, if everything just stays the same, it gets very stagnant and like a pool of water, things don't happen. Cool. Blank segments of instruction are better than blank.
Bit
Longer, shorter.
shorter. Shorter is better than longer.
Shorter is better than longer. One of my favorites now, and I
Yes.
always have to tell myself, Mariah, stop talking. You're done. You finished. So yes, that shorter is better than longer. Humans remember more when they figure out things for themselves or when someone else shows them how to figure things out.
I would think A, because I know if I want to learn how to drive somewhere, I mean, how to get there, I've got to drive it.
Yes, it is letter A. Now, this one can be um, a little bit debated because, especially when we're talking about like hands-on learning or visual audio, yeah, we usually say, somebody has to show us first and then we do it. Well, yes, that is true, but at some point you learn and you remember by doing it yourself. Um, and when we're talking about an ELL classroom, we really want to think about that and make sure that we aren't dominating the classroom because it's very easy since we do know the grammar and we know the instruction and we know exactly step by step. A lot of times we have to say, all right, I presented, now you guys go on, you do it, show me how you're going to figure it out. And when you figure things out, it's all right to make those mistakes. And we have to make sure that we as teachers are willing to embrace those mistakes as well as those successes. All right, for optimal learning, the physical body needs to be blank while the brain and mind is engaged.
Active.
Active, yes. This is one of the things that I know myself, and I'm glad you all cannot see what I'm doing, but I do move my hands a lot because if I start to fall asleep when I'm talking. Um, my legs are always moving, constantly going. And again, this is just something the body needs to be active. And that's why we tell our students if they're like slouching in the chair, we're like, no, no, sit up because that engages your body. If you're just kind of relaxed, then nothing's going to happen. The brain is going to kind of do what it's going to do, but nothing is going to happen because they're not having to utilize any other part of their brain. It's just listening and it's in one ear out the other. But if they have to like sit up or stand up or anything like that, it's going to help them make those connections a little bit better. Cool. All right. So I just want to quickly go over this, and I don't think I need to spend a whole awful lot of time, but the 4 C's are that connection, concepts, concrete practice, and conclusion. Now, for this webinar or for this workshop, We just did our connection activity, and I did present a little bit of the concepts, but all of the concepts have already been presented in our last webinar. So I'm not going to take time to really dive into any of this, but our concrete practice is really going to be the focus of this workshop today. And so, like I said, we're going to do maybe 45 minutes to an hour, just depending. This is all a share out for you. This is the time that you get to think and analyze, and we can share ideas, go back and forth, just to help build your classroom. And that's what these workshops are for. They're for that interaction between us and you guys as instructors.
Awesome.
Cool. So share out how to implement brain-based learning and create lesson plans. Now, the situation you gave on Monday was a great situation. Like I said, I've been thinking about it a little bit, just a little bit. But those hybrid situations, how can we engage students online and face-to-face? So if you don't mind, do you mind sharing again kind of what your situation is, how it's going, and what you're thinking about?
Well, I have a Perithium board, and I have a Perithium board and then another computer that's smaller that's set up that they interrelate. And so then we have the classroom, and the majority of our students are in the classroom. But then we go into Google Meets, and we have like 2 or 3 students that come online that are there with us at the same time. We're meeting all together.
Perfect. So one of the things that I was thinking of is that they're all on a desktop, right? And you project like their screen or their faces out. Like, how do you know that they're there?
Well, I mean, it's just like being in Google Meets. They come on and you see them.
Perfect. So one of the things that I was thinking, because you were talking about a scenario where where they were doing stuff at the board, or they were in a line doing vocab with it. Yeah.
Right.
And you were like, well, how do I engage the student as well? One of the things that came to mind, and because I have seen it done before with like media site classes, or, just kind of keeping students engaged. I can't quite remember because I know it wasn't me. So I don't know if I was watching like a teaching seminar or something, but maybe if you had like a laptop, creating their own like personal space where someone can kind of carry them. Now, obviously it's not optimal, especially if they're wanting to like face to face and see and not see somebody's back. But it could be to kind of give them that space. Like, we're carrying the computer around. This is your space that you would be engaged in if you had like a laptop in those situations where everybody's up and doing stuff.
Well, we do have a camera that shows the whole room, and you can focus. You can like zoom in on one student or zoom out and see the whole classroom. Or
Perfect.
Yeah, it's really neat.
Even something like that where you could say, okay, you're going to be behind Susan over here, and when Susan is done, then it's your turn. Kind of that, giving them that actual, like if they were there, that actual space where even though they're online, they still have a presence in the classroom.
Yeah, and now that you're saying that, I'm thinking, I've been doing it to where I have the Perithium board and then the students are in a line next to it. And now that you say that, I think I should have had the students in the back of the classroom where I could have zoomed in on those students and they could have been more seeing more what was going on.
That would be a really good idea too, because again, I don't quite know how your classroom is set up, but yeah, where you could have it like, all right, when it's one student's turn, we really focus in on them. This is who it is. And then once their turn is over, then we zoom back out or back and forth. That would be a really great way to get them engaged and make them feel like, hey, I know I'm not there in class, but I'm still able to participate.
Yeah, I think that's what I was doing wrong. Because
it's really hard. It's really hard having those hybrid situations because you really have to think outside the box, and we're not used to that.
Yeah. And it happens so quickly because like you're doing something in the classroom and there's nobody online, and you're in the middle of something and somebody comes online, and all of a sudden you have to shift what you're doing.
So one of the things that you might, And I know this does take extra time, but you might want to think about having two different lesson plans where you have the one that if it is just face to face, and then if for some reason someone comes out, you can always quickly situate. And there is no like quickly. That's really hard to say. Like transition. There we go. But you might want to think about having like two different lesson plans is that all have the same content, but saying if it's just face to face, this is exactly how we'll do it. If we have one hybrid, this is we can quickly or a little bit more seamlessly is switch those gears to make sure that we're accommodating for both.
Right.
Yeah. Again, on your end, it comes back to the teacher. On your end, it will take a little bit more time, will take a little bit more effort, but once you kind of get that first 4 or 5 times, you'll realize that it's going to be a little bit easier if you kind of have that end in mind. So I remember we talked about that, having an end in mind with whatever you're doing. So think about it like there's two different avenues, is that there is this possibility of it just being face to face. So my end in mind is this goal plan. But if in the case that we do have someone that hops in, this is my end. Eventually they're all going to come up to the same. But I would really consider having two different lesson plans just to be on the safe side. And again, will it be a little bit more work? A little bit, yes.
Exactly.
A little bit more safe than, kind of feeling frustrated, because I'm sure there are times where you just get a little, I don't know, maybe frustrated, right?
Rattled, I think, is more
Rattled.
than.
There you go. See, I was gonna say discouraged, and I was like, no, it's not discouraged, but more of that fluster, that, oh, okay, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna do it? So if you can think about it beforehand, like prepare yourself to say, this is what I would like to happen, but I'm ready for this.
Right.
And have
And I think what happened the other day, was that we hadn't had anybody online in like a week. So I was just kind of laid back, and then all of a sudden, the one student who is normally online and wasn't online all week came to class. So,
oh man. So, this might be something else. Do you guys have an attendance policy, or is it like open, drop in, drop out?
it's open, drop in, drop out.
Okay. Cool. So maybe you could, and I don't know what your policy is, but you might think about, having a policy is, let me know if you're going to be here on class or not. Just send me like a quick message. Is that an option either?
Yeah, sure, they could. And they usually do text me, like, they text me if they're not going to be there, but they don't normally text me if they are,
Uh-huh. So maybe if you use like Google Classroom, maybe you could just do like a quick discussion poll where it's like, do you plan to attend class today? Check yes or no. Because you know how they have like discussions. So on discussions, you can make a poll where it says, do you plan on attending class today? Check yes, check no, just to kind of give you a better idea and make it an assignment. So that way you get a better idea of who's going to be there or not.
Yeah.
That might give you a way to kind of not pressure them to be there, but just say, hey, I want to make sure that I have the correct materials for whatever we're going to do in class.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So you're talking about when you get into Google Meet, you just make a poll?
Well, it's because you use Google Classroom, right?
I mean, Google Classroom.
Yeah.
We do use Google Classroom and Google Meets.
Yeah. So if you're in Classroom and you make a question, you know how there's like all those assignments options.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
So if you make a discussion, a question, ask a question on there. Let me pull it up right quick because that might be a little bit easier. Classroom. So here we are in Classroom. If I come here and I say create, and I create a question. Cool. So here would be like my question and the instructions, but right over here that says short answer, and then you can also make it a multiple choice. So if you change that to multiple choice, you could say right here, do you plan on attending class today, or whatever date you want to put. And then right here for the options, you would say yes. And then it becomes a quick little poll.
Okay, that's interesting.
And it's really quick. So this way, and I love this because you don't have to make like a form, which
Yeah.
is a good thing. I don't want to make a whole bunch of forms that ask yes or no.
Mhm.
And then you can reuse this over and over and over. Do you plan to attend class today? Yes or no? And then you can ask the question. So I'm going to say class question. Maybe if I can spell. Right.
You'd have to date it or something so that, let me put her in the bathroom. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back.
Perfect. So if I were to just ask this question, I put a date on it. I don't have it under a topic, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it. So that way you can see what it would look like. So when they come here on their end, it would pop up like this, of course, without this side. And it would say, do you plan on attending class today? And they would just simply press yes or no, and then it's completed.
And so they would get a notification that the question's been made
Mhm.
in classroom.
Mhm.
That's a good idea.
And so I do like this option. Like I said, when we were online and doing all of our online questions, if students missed a class, I would put the recording on here, and then I would ask like a question, and instead of making like a huge form, just to verify that they watched it, I would put like a question here and then the multiple choice options where they would have to pick. And so this is a really good option to use in classroom, especially if you want to just not make a huge form. You just want to ask a simple question where it's yes, no, or some sort of short response like that. Awesome. Perfect.
Well, I have never used that, so that's neat.
Oh, I wish I was using Google Classroom a little bit more, but since we are all back in face to face, we aren't, or I'm not using it half as much as I probably should. I do, but not as often as I should. But
Well, I mostly scan the pages of whatever we're going to do. So it's horrible, but I've torn my books apart because that's the only way I can do it to get it to scan right. And then I put that into Google Classroom. And so then when I present, I'm able to open that up as a PDF, and I can write on it and write the answers and all of that. And they're able to see everything before they even come to class.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That is really good. I laugh because I have a book here that I just chopped off the spine.
Yeah.
I'm like, nope, don't need that. I'm using it. I'm scanning it in. So
Yeah.
Perfect. So with your hybrid situation, because I want to make sure we address as much, because I know the other Nancy was saying that she has like a lot of trouble with them actually participating. Do you find that?
No, mine, they participate pretty good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah, and I was trying to figure out her situation, and I couldn't figure out if they're on at the same time as she's in class or
if it's just an online class. Yeah, I was wondering that same thing as well.
Yeah.
But even if because we want to make sure our students are engaged, so there are a lot of things that you can do to make sure that they are engaged online. One of the things could be putting a policy, and just because they are away from class doesn't mean that they don't have to abide by the same rules. So like one of the things that we say in class is, don't use your cell phone. So even if it's online, you don't use your cell phone, stuff
Mhm.
like that. One of the things that I think is really good is like creating a either a form, a document where it's like the rights and responsibilities of a student within the classroom. Because you don't really want to say rules, because when you start saying rules, people get really
Right.
upset about it. Um, just because it has such a negative connotation. But if it was something to say like rights and responsibilities of a student within our program, that changes their mindset to really think, okay, now I'm actually like a citizen of this class. Um, and so wording is a huge part of it. Is how are you going to word it to make sure that they actually feel like they are being respected, um, and not have to worry about, their ideas or thoughts being pushed aside.
Right.
And so that's really important, is creating that level of respect, and across the board, because as teachers we can respect them, of course, but if they're not respecting us, it kind of makes it a little bit
Right.
more difficult. So
I think I'm kind of have the opposite, that sometimes I forget to engage them and they will engage themselves. I'm like, I'm here, lady, don't forget me, you know?
well, that is good that they have that attitude. They have that, I'm going to be in here no matter what, because this
Yeah.
class is for me.
Yeah. And that's it. They're like, I spend my time getting on here. I'm going to talk to you guys.
Exactly. So what other situations do you have with your hybrid class that you might want to address?
I think one of the things I have trouble with is like we'll break up into pairs.
Hmm.
And the only way I've been able to resolve it so far is to have the student that's online call someone in the classroom, but then we have to share phone numbers, you know. But
Oh,
and I know Tina always said that that was a problem with some people to share phone numbers, you know, but that's the only thing I've figured out I can do for them to work with someone in the classroom.
now, okay, so here's a question. Um, do all of your students have like a smartphone, or is there a way that they can use a laptop? Because if so, you can have them not call, but do like a separate Google Meet.
No, they all have their, we don't have laptops. They just have their cell phones.
Okay, so and you guys have Wi-Fi that they're able to
Yes.
connect to? Okay, so perfect. So what you could have them do is, instead of exchanging phone numbers, because especially I'm not one to share my phone number at all, um, is you can have them create a Google Meet, or you can create the Meet link, so that way they can join, and they can join on their phones with Google Meet. So that way you avoid that, sharing numbers across. If somebody doesn't want to give out their numbers, the safest way would be to make a Meet link. So that way they can actually see each other's faces, they can talk, they can communicate still, and do
Mhm.
the activities just as much. And you completely avoid that whole problem. So um, does your program do NM Delta counts for students?
We were at the beginning, we were getting an M out, but then I found that we didn't have to, and I quit.
Okay. So that might be something, like, especially if they have an NM Delt, they have access to all of that material. So they could even do a voice call if they had Google Chats. Um, and so that way, again, they would avoid giving their number out. They could also get a Google number. And that just becomes a little bit more safer, especially if they do have an NM Delt and they are using like chats or meet, because all of that, like, in the odd event, and we never want anything to happen, but if it becomes like, well, I didn't feel safe with with my peer because they said this or something like that,
Mhm.
it's always something that you can always revert back to. Whereas if they have their cell phone number, it, like you said,
Yeah.
there's always that, I'm not sure. The safest way I could see that is, you create a Google Meet link that they can, utilize all the time, that they just click on it and they can communicate back and forth that way. Or they can create their own Google Meet link as well.
So would that make a lot of noise if you're into Google Meet?
Um, no, yes and no. So one of the things is on our on Google Meet. Now let me see if you have this button. There is right next to your microphone.
Mm-hmm.
There should be like a little sound button.
No, I have the microphone, then the video, and then captions and the hand.
Oh, I'm gonna have to ask Tina about that. All right. So I know on my end, and let me ask Tina about that one. Because on my end and on a lot of, or on some, not a lot, on some of them there is an option, and it might be in an extension, but there's an option to actually mute all of the sound from one Google Meet while you're on another.
Hmm.
So like I, instead of like putting this mute button and the video camera button, if I just, and I'm going to do it right now, because you should get a notification that says Mariah has muted the sound. So let me do it and then I'll turn it right back
Mhm.
on. Did you get that little like pop up? It said, Brian, I muted the sound.
No, uh-uh.
Oh, so it might just be, let me ask Tina about that. About mute button.
Because that others, Emily had said that she uses her phone and then she can like use it as a camera or whatever, and they use it to present. But I've never been able to do that because it gives me this terrible noise, and I
So,
don't know how they get that to not do that.
okay. Um, you know what? That is actually, that is a really good question. I'm going to have to ask Tina about it. And it might be because I know I do have a lot of extensions on here. I know you have a couple of them, but I know I have like Beyond Meat. I have, let's see, Meat Plus. I think you have Meat Plus, don't you?
Um, I know that I have. I pay $4.99 for something, but I've never learned to use it.
Oh, okay. So it might be a button that we have to get Tina to activate because I know there was a couple of things that were changed with our Google subscription for the G Suite for Education. So I might just have to ask Tina about that because if we can get that mute button, all it is like right, like I said, it's right next to your microphone and camera. It just sounds like a little sound button, or it looks, excuse me, it looks like a little sound button. And if you click it, it'll mute all of the sound for that specific meet. So if you had um, a student who had access to just click that button, it would turn off the sound for that. You wouldn't be able to hear her. She wouldn't be able to hear you, and then she could join another meet as well.
At the same time.
Mhm.
Yeah, because like I say, I always get this reverb or whatever you call it. I don't know. It's just horrible.
Yeah, so that might be another option. Um, they can always use like a Google call button, or a Google number. Excuse me. They can always use like a Google number, um, and that might, you know, help as well. So that way they're not sharing it. Um, that would be probably the safest way, is I would say, if that's like one of your biggest concerns is having them share their numbers, which most of them by the time they get comfortable with each other they share their numbers anyways,
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
you never want to put them on the spot where you're like, all right, now share your number over here. So safest way would have them either get a Google number, which if they have an NM Delta account it shouldn't cost anything, it should just be free. I think if they have their own personal Gmail, they get like so many minutes free and then they have to pay for it, something like that. Best bet, if they have an NM Delt, especially if they have an NM Delt, they can do a Meet link, um, where they will just have access to all of the materials and not even worry about it.
Yeah, I need to start. I start using the technology more in my classroom.
I think we all do. I think we kind of got tired of it during COVID and now
Mhm.
we're like, oh, we're done. We're not
Yeah,
using it
we're
anymore.
never going to touch this again. Like I was going to have them download the Jamboard, but I haven't done it yet. But because I
Yeah.
know they love doing Quizlet and they love doing Kahoot. They love those things that they can use their phone for and answer.
Yeah. So maybe that's just another thing is diving into more of the online technology, all of those tools that are going to be very helpful. And maybe it is just searching and getting some ideas of how you can create an engaging environment utilizing more technology.
Yeah.
It's
Because I
not.
know used to with Hangouts, it was very easy. But then when they went to chat, you can't make a phone call in chat, can you?
I have not tried it. Let's see. If I come to chat, I thought you should be able to. Hmm. Oh, maybe you're not able to anymore.
I don't think so. When they went to chat, we lost that capability. And in Hangouts, it was just so easy. You know, it just had the little telephone, and you could click on it and call that person.
Okay, yeah. So you can start a phone call from Google Chat if you have Google Voice with the Google Workspace account. So that looks like, and I can get more information on that one as well to see if what's it called Google Chat, because it might just be like I said, if um, it might just be one of those things where they have to like get one more part for it to work. Um, but I am not sure. That one I'm gonna have to look into. And as soon as I do find one or find out an answer, excuse me, I will let you know.
Okay.
Because I'm seeing some where it says yes they can, but you need this, or yes you can. So I'm gonna have to look at that one just a little bit more, and I'll have a good answer for you here within a week.
Okay.
Because that would make life a whole lot easier if you could just hit
Yeah.
that call button. Yeah. Perfect. All right. What other questions did you have?
That's most, you know, those my main ones.
Awesome. Awesome. So the only other thing that I had, and we're going to kind of close up here, because I want these workshops, definitely I do want them to be for you and designed for you. We have like 45 minutes to an hour is what we plan for them. And for workshop or for webinars, we have like 30 to 45 minutes. So because we want to make our workshop or make our webinars as short as possible because we don't want to draw it out. But the workshops are those times for you to share out, gather ideas, and try to figure out what's happening. That's what we want these workshops to be. So these are planned for like 45 to an hour, just depending on your guys' needs, not our needs, but what your guys' needs are. The only other one that I had was I can't attitude, because this was addressed yesterday in our teacher meet. But maybe that's something, and it doesn't sound like you have that problem at all. It sounds like your students are more like, hey, I'm still here, let me in. And so that's always the great situation to have. But we do see a lot of those I can't attitudes, and it's all about mindset. Is what I was telling one of our teachers yesterday is make a rule where you tell them, all right, don't say what you can't do, but tell me what you can do. Something like that. And it is about changing that simple mindset of, we are so eager to like self-assess ourselves and say, oh, I can't do this, or I need to do this, I need to change that, especially like myself. And I'll say this like this is, I need to lose weight, I need to do this, I need to make sure this, I'm not doing this right or that right. It's so easy to find those negative aspects, but what about those positive aspects that we have about ourselves? And so changing that I can't attitude into, well, I can count to 5. All right, perfect. That's great. I can identify numbers. I can tell you my phone number. That's wonderful. Those are great successes. And it's all about celebrating what they can do. And then we'll deal about what they can't do later, because it's not about them not being able to do it, because yeah, nobody can do it if they're first learning, but they will be able to.
Well, and something I had come up today, and I've had it come up several times, and I don't want to. I don't know how to say it without sounding racist. I don't mean to, but the difference in the cultures. It seems like the Hispanic people from Mexico, they have this very, or many of my students have had, they have this very stern personality, and I almost think, oh my gosh, they're going to get in a fight, you know. and, like, and I
That,
don't know what to do to control it. I mean, it's just like,
oh, that is a lot. And this is where I would say, make sure you have like a set of rules of what, because I will say that Mexican Hispanic culture is very forceful, especially if you hear people talking in Spanish. Um, Now, the funny thing about me is I do know Spanish. When I'm calm, I can't speak it very well. When I get angry, I have like perfect Spanish.
oh wow, how funny.
And so a lot of people, if I start speaking Spanish really fast, and if I start getting loud, people know I tend to be upset about something. Yeah. And so it is definitely a cultural thing. Um, and you want to respect those cultures, you want to respect it, but you also want to allow them to identify that they can keep their culture, but they have to also respect the American culture that they are in as well. And American culture, we don't raise our voices or we don't do this. And so that might be something is yes, respect each other's cultures, but also respect the classroom. And the classroom is your environment. It's how you're going to make it, where you do want to celebrate those diversities, but you also want to say, all right, but we do have limits to this as well.
Yeah, and today I have a couple of students in my classroom that are teachers. We're teachers in Mexico. And so then I have another young lady that has this very strong personality. And so the one teacher was trying to explain to her a grammar point that she was not getting, but she wouldn't shut up long enough for the other lady to make her understand. You know, I mean, just
Yeah. And that's great if you can have like a rule. And like I said, because it does get very hard, especially if they are educated in their own country. It gets very hard because they know the materials if it was in their language, and that frustrates them a lot. So how can we overcome that? One of the things I would say is go back again to having those rules. Is you get 3 minutes to share out, or say, hey, do you want me to explain that to you? Like make it a rule. Say you have to respect each other's, and it's all about um, and this is kind of going off a little bit, but consent. Right now my nephew has been like diagnosed with like ADHD and ODD, like a whole bunch of disorders, and he just can't socialize very well, and so he's gotten a lot of trouble for what the schools consider sexual harassment. And he's like, I'm just trying to like communicate with people and get to know them, and he's going about it all wrong because he doesn't know how to socialize. He doesn't have that self-awareness. So one of the things that we have been teaching him is, if you want to hug or if you want to approach something, always ask, can I do this? It's always that consent. And in the classroom, it's the same way. If someone is struggling, maybe make it a rule where you say, ask the person, can I help you? Can I explain it to you? And if they say yes, then
yeah,
great. If they say no, then, say, all right, that's fine if they say no. It's all
right.
about consent. And that also comes in with the aspect of American culture again, because I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of Mexican cultures, they're very close. They have no sense of space at all.
Right.
And so it's also one of those things that you can, while we're still talking about it in the classroom, a lot of Mexicans will get themselves in trouble because they don't have that sense of space or that sense of consent. Um, and this is like going a little bit more abstractedly, to other in situations, but they're going to have to know those skills out in the real world. And so you do want to kind of create that environment. Is, one of our rules is you can ask if you want them to explain it, but if they say no, then leave it for the teacher, something like that. Or you
Okay.
have 3 minutes to explain,
Yeah.
and you know,
maybe just be quiet until she explains, and then explain if that was not what you wanted to know, you know.
mhm. I would really give it like a time limit or something to where they know. Um, but it sounds like you have a very very strong group of people that you teach.
Yes.
I would
I
be
came home and took a nap, let me tell you.
you will
I'm
be
exhausted.
so with that, you might just have to set up some boundaries and say this is what it is and really be firm about it. Will you get some resistance? Oh yeah. Yeah, especially and if you're not being racist at all. It very much is that culture and it's just how it is. Um, you will get some hesitation, you'll get some pushback, but in the end, it is your classroom and you are there for the students. And if one student isn't feeling comfortable enough to share their questions, their concerns, then there needs to be adjustments made because it's not just about, you know, just one or two students. It's about everyone, and you need to
Right.
make sure that everyone in there is feeling comfortable enough to do it, whether they're educated in their own country or not.
True. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's what I had, but I appreciate it. I need somebody to just hear me.
Definitely. And that's why we want to do these workshops. We want to have a nice space that everyone can come together and share their thoughts, their opinions, their ideas, um, their their high points, their low points, and really just share because we want to build a community. We want
Yeah.
to build a community of teachers around New Mexico. That's our goal.
Yeah. And Meriah, is this the only time y'all have? Is it 12?
Is well, because we were doing it on Fridays, and then a lot of people said nobody could do it on Fridays. And so 12 seemed to be the best time for the majority of people. What time would you look at? Like, what do you think would be a
Well, because our beginning ESL class doesn't get done until 12:15. So that keeps our teachers from attending.
oh. So even if we pushed it back to like maybe 12:30?
Yeah, it would be much better because I know Emily would be part of, she would like to be in the trainings, but and Tom probably too, but
Okay.
they teach until 12:15, so and then it's probably 12:30 before the students are out of the classroom.
hmm You know what? Let me talk with our team because we have kind of established it for the fiscal year. But I mean, if your group of teachers are going to be the majority of the people coming, then I think we can accommodate for that.
Well, I just wish everybody would get on. I don't know why it's not.
A lot of it has to do with there's a lot of burnout.
Yeah,
I'm
but I just think the